Nearing the end of the third week of March, and the project for today is beginning a slab in the entry hall here, which I've been cleaning and organizing. It still doesn't look very clean and organized, but making progress. It's got three bays, three arches, the third one, the second one, the first one, and then arched over to the other side with this big old window over here, and then connects to the water feature room, which has the drawbridge there. And so right now it has a dirt floor, which is not level, and there's a lot of things in the way. So I'm just starting with, I'm going to put one piece of remesh down in this area here. So I'm going to dig it out, and then put some stone down, put the remesh down, and then make a slab that should be about level with that door. Probably about 2 inches thick when it's all said and done. All I have for materials are 2 bags of concrete mix and then 1 bag of Portland. But I have sand and stone. So I don't know if that's really going to be enough, but I'm going to use everything I got and see what comes of it. So here's how far I got with that slab yesterday. Just held it down with some things. Step on that. And so I'm just going to remove the rocks and the various things that were holding the remesh down. And all of this was just 1/2 bag of Portland, surprisingly. It wasn't like the winners. It's like 2 buckets of sand and like more than 2 buckets of stone. So I got a lot more coverage than I figured off 1/2 bag of Portland. So the other 1/2 bag I'm going to reserve for mortar mix. And now I'm going to mix some of those pre-mixed bags of cement. Start with 1, and then fill in the rest of the gaps around this around this slab while removing the obstacles. And I'll give you a shot of that. So after a batch of mortar, so I had done like most of a bag of cement or concrete to fill in the holes, and then after that dried, I did the mortar batch, and that was like half of the remaining half of the mortar bag of the Portland bag to make mortar out of it using sand. And so I used 3/4 of the bag of Portland, just about all of the 1 bag of concrete premix, and this little slab area is done. Which eventually I want this slab to fill the whole entry hall area, but this is just a start, basically. And then over time, I will work the remesh along the edges into the sidewall to help to connect the floor with the sidewall. And I'll do that with mortar over kind of iterations. But this part here is all done. Got it nice and flat, and it should, I haven't tested it with water, but it should slope away from the door that way. And then over time, as I'm able, I will extend it that way in additional pours. But that's all for this little section. And then with the dirt that I dug out of there, I pounded the first tire of the season, which is a nice big truck tire. And maybe I'll end up doing more of a tire wall here in time, as I have dirt to move into it. Look at this. So the day I'm getting my biggest delivery of the year. Yesterday, the neighboring farmer drags this broken, seized up truck into the road so that I can't receive my delivery, so the delivery truck can't get up the road. These are the kind of neighbors that I have. So now I have to figure out, how do I get the delivery around this truck, which is just blocking the road for a big vehicle. Great. The last week of March, got a supply of Portland, rebar, a whole bunch of remesh, another pallet of Portland, and then all of the lath necessary for the first big project of the year, which is the Molly Stark Tower. So these tires over here are the foundation. I'll be building up those tires with that dirt pile there. And then this table here, which is on top of a blue barrel there, that will be a structural column to connect an arch from there to the tires, and then to over here. And now that all the materials are here, I may be able to get started today or tomorrow and show you how that goes. So this used to be that table, and now I've cut the barrel off, cut the bottom out, and now I'm going to dig out the potting soil type stuff in there before driving the T-posts in, and that will be the support column here. So there was 8-foot T-posts driven down about 6 feet each. Then there's 2 sticking out, and mixing concrete to pour it in there after tamping some stone in on the bottom. So that's as much fill as it got with that batch of concrete, which was just the remaining of the bag of Portland that I'd started on the other project, and then a bag of premix, and the remaining of the other one. So it still gets cold at night, so I'm gonna use a blanket to try to insulate it a little, and then we'll see what it's like tomorrow. I've been working on this all day. It's just over 30 feet of remesh and lath. Got it all tied up, and I'm going to try to put it in place for the first arch here. There's a lot of snow coming in the next couple of days, so it might be a bad idea, but I'm going to try nonetheless. So that was a complete shit show, and I don't see how this can withstand the 6 to 8 inches of snow that's coming. But I have no patience and didn't want to leave it on the ground, and so I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope for the best. Check it out. The snow's been like small enough particles and not sticky. It's kind of like a sleety rain type of snow. So it's not even sticking to the metal. Woo! And the arch is still up there. Today, first week of April, figured out how to swap a clutch on the chainsaw. And I'm cleaning up the front of the castle area where I cut down some of these trees. Got branches all over. And doing some fire cleaning. Another day, another fire. Still cleaning up the hillside. Yesterday's fire was up there in the fire pit and future water feature. And new acquaintance gave me a great idea to build a drawbridge in the tunnel opening there. So that'll be added to this year's projects. And I'm hanging out with the boys, cleaning up the deadwood, setting the fire. Fire's about done, or at least the hillside's all cleaned up. The boys are laying down. I'm smoking my backy. We're enjoying the fire. So there's another break in the weather where it's warm enough to do some more cement work. So I took the blankets out. There's a bit of standing water in there. I got as much out as I can. You can see the other T-posts in there. So I got a bunch of rebar coming vertically out of there, connected to the various T-posts, and then I've got some lath making a little cage and tapering it in as it goes up. And now I'll make the next batch of concrete and then do as good a job as I can to get all those little cracks in between the rebar and the T-posts and everything, and then displace that water. And then by the time it's done, there should be cement up to filling most of that. We'll see how it goes. So it got pretty messy because that batch of concrete was a lot wetter than I expected. Plus there's all the water in there, but I was still able to get it this high, and it's about 10 inches higher than before. And now I can work the column up kind of on either side, but then on this side I want to add another arch going to the other way over to there. So it just goes a little bit at a time. Gotta make sure the foundations are all good, and then over here starting to bend the arch like this, so that it gets some strength in the other direction. And then I'll end up working on extending this one higher, but I don't know if I can get to that today. Definitely not today, and it's gonna be cold and rainy, so it'll probably be maybe a week before I can make more progress. So yesterday evening I was able to do a small batch of mortar to kind of build up the form here, so that today I was able to pour the concrete into that form. And then similarly you can see over here where the mortar was kind of built up around the lath to make the form, though concrete hasn't gone in this one yet. But I've extended the lath on this side to be able to do more in here, so I'll put concrete in this one next, and then I might be able to do a little bit of mortar today. We shall see. Another little trick I'm doing is heating up the water on the stove so that the concrete and mortar cures faster, given that it's a bit chilly and warmer temperatures help it to cure. So on the first day of the second week of April, I did the concrete in the footer, and then did a batch of mortar to get some vertical on this lath over here, tying in that tall T-post and getting a start on the rebar. That's all the mortar I can do for the next few days, because it's gonna freeze, I think, tomorrow night, and tonight gets down to almost 40, or a little below 40 maybe. So on this side also I filled with concrete, and then got this little piece over here that I couldn't get concrete, got mortar in that, and then got to start on the mortar going up over here and sort of like the side walls. So once all that is in there pretty solid, then I can start working my way up and adjusting the arch to be the correct shape. So right now there's only rebar up to there and up to there. There's no rebar in the middle, so it's real flimsy. Without the support, that would collapse basically. And so I'm just gonna get a long ladder and then just kind of work my way up, and we'll see. On the next day I can do it, but I'm really happy with the progress for today, and it's starting to get anchored in there. Another day, another fire. Today cleaning up the trimmings of the fruit trees, and also, I don't think I took a video of this before, but I built a goat pen over here, which is connected to the third bay of the shed there. And then so today I cut down, it's full of like a blackberry bramble, and there's some burdocks and some other stuff in there. So I cut everything down to like hip height so that the goats will be able to maintain all this. And then other than the pile over there, took all of those brambles out and I'm burning them over here. And meanwhile the chickens are doing the chicken thing. And the boys were down here, but they went back up. There's Sammy and Kendall. That's all for now. Beautiful day. Another day, another fire. Today cleaning up this lower field area, and this a couple planter beds, and clean up these blackberry brambles. There's one over there right near where my best friend Lewis was buried. My best chicken Mimi was buried right over there. My best boy Spartacus was buried up there. This land is a burial ground of my family and fellow allodial sovereigns. Fire's going well. One bad thing is the goats, they always try to get my pipe. They see that I'm always eating on it and they think that it's food. So today they got a good bite out of it and broke the stem. In Vermont you can't even order stems. Crazy, but it's still smokable. Today I'm doing tires. So I'm cutting into the hillside to place these tires, and then I'm going to add tires on top, and then I'm going to cut into this and then end up doing a rock wall up underneath the tires, and we'll see how far I get today. So a little bit of progress. The top ones aren't pounded, but yeah, progress slow and steady. Here's how far I got on the tires today. Starting to get to bigger tires as it goes up, and do a little bit of fire edge as well. The boys are hanging out by the fire. Arthur's over here also chilling, and I'll probably call it there for today. So I've heated this water to a boil so that my mortar mix will increase the temperature so it can cure a little faster in this relatively cold temperature. I've bent the sides of this arch back, as you can see, and then I've stuck 2 more pieces of rebar that were previously supporting the arch to go the other way. But I won't be able to pour directly into that until I mortar around the bottom of that form, because it's not tight with the last one. So this next batch is going to be going entirely on this side, and I should be able to raise that arch to about where the ladder is on that side. And yeah, that's the next plan. So after the first batch of mortar, it was nice and warm to work with, probably like 80 degrees or something after the other materials cooled it, the sand and the Portland and everything. I was able to get all the way up to the ladder, and then over here, just on the one side, got good coverage, and then on the bottom, got it nice and anchored in the bend of the metal here, as well as these 2 pieces of rebar here for the second arch, which I'll probably work on next, and this will be about done for today as all this is curing. Look at this jumble mess that I've got to support this. I've just got, it's just a pile of tires and some panels and then random pieces of rebar and ladders and pipe, and this is far from a good arch, like as far as it being even. but I work my way across so that that part there, the rebar, can help to really even out the arch. So I'm happy with the shape of that section, and I'm happy with the shape of this up to here. You can see probably right here is really flat, but I'll end up adding rebar, and then it'll probably take 2 pieces of rebar to connect from there over to this side. And once that solidifies, I can put up a tall ladder against the peak, work on the rebar all around, and then get a bead of mortar that'll go over the entire arch where the pieces of rebar are, and then it'll lock it into place with the compression strength. So most of that will probably be tomorrow, but I might pre-do the metal piece for up here for the rest of today while that is curing. So with some high risk acrobatics, high danger, I'm kind of climbing up there. It's very unstable, but I've got rebar across in one line. I'm working on another line. Hey, I need that! And once I can get at least 2 lines of rebar across, I'll probably do some more mortar today. Hey, cut that out! So it's Sunday morning in mid-April, and the day before yesterday, when I was able to do the last mortar, I got 2 lines of mortar across the whole arch. And so today, now that that's nice and solidified and got some undercoating on the right side there, today I should be able to get coverage on the entire thing. And I'm pretty happy with the shape. I might have to iron out a couple little places, but for the most part, I'm happy with it. And yeah, I'll get lots of coverage today. Be a good day for it. So Monday morning, there's a bit of a surprise frost last night, which is really not good for mortar in its first 2 days. So it was just below freezing, but the good news is I just learned about calcium nitrate, and so I've added calcium nitrate to the last 2 batches, which should help with any freeze risk as an anti-freezing and a speeding up and adding heat and stuff. So I got coverage on the whole arch yesterday and kind of ironed out the inconsistencies. It's not perfect, but I'm happy with it. And then over here, I started on this sidewall. So those 2 panels there are stapled on to work as forms, so I can plaster on from the other side today. And then that 4x4 plywood is on the opposite side, so I'll plaster on this side from there today. And then it's going to be flimsy at the top is the only issue. And so I might add a piece of rebar in line with the arch around the top before I plaster. Or I can always do that later. So I've got screws going into the tire here, and that's going to be enough to kind of anchor that into place when I plaster it, because I haven't done the tire work below, and I'm kind of not necessarily doing the right order of operations, but it's all going to work. And then I put 2 pieces of rebar up top, you can kind of see, starting to arch this way. And I've decided that, well, I don't know if I'm going to do it this year, but eventually I'm going to do my biggest arch yet over this gate all the way over to the bedrock over there. So that's going to be really tall and really big, but it's not a priority. So today I might make the metalwork and potentially even raise it for this arch here. So it'll go from the column over to just above this refrigerator door. And then also you can see this piece of rebar sticking out up there. So I'm going to do a line of rebar connecting that piece of rebar over to that corner, which will act as a buttress from that corner up to here. And similarly, this arch will act as a buttress to that structure. And if this mortar is dry enough underneath, I'll do a little bit of underlayer of the mortar as well if I can, and probably do a bit of metal work, bending things. That cement block is up there to kind of adjust the shape a little bit, because there was like a high point right there, and now the shape at this point is pretty much finalized. So in an hour or so, when it warms up, I'll be mixing. So by Tuesday morning, most of the supports are removed. I also did a little start for a column foundation over here on some bedrock, and tied up a whole another arch section. And then over here you can see how the bottom form was removed and what that looks like raw. So it just needs a coat on this side, and I got 2 coats on that side, and removed the form on the back side, so it looks like that on the back side. So I'll mortar that up on the back side, and then all that will be tied in. And right now I'm tying in the next piece of remesh up there, and then tie that in, and then I'll add some lath. And then the last part over here to receive the arch on this side, I got 2 pieces of rebar kind of starting to be mortared in around this refrigerator, and I'll get a second coat on these today, and then once probably tomorrow, once it has that second coat, this will be ready to receive the arch on this side. And I got a second coat on the outside of the arch on pretty much the whole thing, so that it's nice and solid. At one point I was in a really precarious situation on a ladder right there and fell with a bucket of mortar, and with all the exposed sharp metal it could have been very dangerous. But I held onto those pieces of remesh, which are bent, and they were able to support my weight, so I didn't get seriously injured, and it was strong enough to do so, which is good. So that's all for today, or for this morning. Here's a close-up of how I'm starting this column on the bedrock here. First I cleaned up the bedrock as well as I could, and then here's a piece of rebar which is bent in a double circle, and then there's just some pieces of lath in there to kind of close up the gaps, and then I'll add some concrete and start some steel going up and start this column most likely today as well. Thursday morning, and today I'm going to raise this arch up to there. I was going to take a set up a time lapse with a tripod, but I've misplaced my tripod. So let's explain that I'm going to put that corner tied up to there, take that corner tied up to there, it'll be all floppy, and then I'll just support the middle and then start working on the rebar to make the arch. I've got 3 batches on these rebar end pieces to really anchor them into this side, right around this fridge. This side ties in well to the tire column where it's not insulated on that side. This side not quite as structural because there's some insulation there, but it'll be good to support this, and I'll give you a shot once the arch is up. So now it's tied off on both sides, and it's just a matter of pushing the middle up with some kind of support. I secured it a little higher on either side, and now to push the peak up. And now the peak is up. Obviously the shape is not perfect now, but now I can use ladders and rebar to even out the arch and work my way around it to get it to the right shape. So I had to adjust this side to bring it down about a foot and to kind of angle it a little like that, and same with this side to angle it that way, so as to get the top of it to angle down towards the arch on the inside, because now I'm thinking I'm going to end up connecting the 2 arches, though I'm not entirely sure, but that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. But then there's that window there, so I'm going to want to bring it up above that window somehow, which is questionable and might require another arch or something. But basically by pulling it out and angling it, because of the way that it's actually wider closer to me, but I want it taller closer to me, so I have to do that to get the top to angle where the top is taller closer to me, to get it to angle to go the other way, so it's a somewhat consistent angle. It's a bit confusing, but I got that all kind of adjusted now, and now I can work on the rebar after lunch to go across the top. So by the end of the day on Thursday, I got this arch all prepped for mortar. I got sort of an arch up into that corner, which is a bit confusing, but it's going to connect. So I just got to start mortaring the ends of that tomorrow. I got an arch right here from the pillar over to that side. The other day I got an arch up here from that exposed rebar down to that pillar. Then over here, if it'll focus, working on that column over there. And then also bending the remesh and lath from this arch around the sides of this, so that in the first batch of mortar tomorrow I can kind of fasten all that so that the form for this concrete in the middle can get done. So it's going to freeze tonight and should be lots of mortar work tomorrow. So by Saturday I worked my way up a little bit on this column. Just it rained a lot, so I'm getting some water out of that before making it a little taller, putting some more concrete in there, and that arch is cemented in. The arch up there is cemented in, and I was able to connect those 2 sufficiently. Worked my way up a bit over here, And then on this column over there, it's got lath on it, and I'm also gonna put some concrete in there and pull the form there, so I'll be able to plaster this side of that, and then also pull the form there so that I can plaster that as well. Shoot, there. And then working on also the third form over here, which is just a triangle. I was initially just used that panel to keep the ends of the metal from flapping in the wind, but then realized I could just use it as a form, so mortaring onto that as well. It's all kind of sketchy on what it's actually supported by on the edges of the tires, but it's also not that heavy, and it's just enough there. And then also with these circles, I made that design the other day, and I'm going to put circles all around it as windows in this Molly Stark tower. And then over time I'll pack out these tires, and I'm kind of working my way around the side of it. So that's it before I do some more mortar and concrete today. And yeah, it's Monday morning, the final week of the preseason, and you can see some of the work from yesterday. I got these two windows in. I'm going to put these round windows in each bent section of the tower here. So this one, it has some lath up to it and the remesh bent around it, and the circles aren't perfect. I did as good of a job as I could, but I can fix the shape one with the lath and the mortar, hopefully. And then here I added a second piece of rebar to give this arch, which is this arch on the right, if I can get the sun out of the camera, arches up to buttress that wall. So the one arch goes to there, and then the other arch goes to there, and then I'll connect the two arches with remesh. And so this section here, which I got a little bit of mortar on with the leftover of my column, it's a double bend. It bends up and then it bends out to connect from one to the other. So I got that rebar in and all of that metalwork prepped, so that today I'll start with mortar. It's a good day for it, and then be able to get some mortar coverage up to almost the peak of this second arch, and then connect it to the first arch, and then this will give it a whole bunch of vertical strength, the whole arch, and stabilize it. And then the other big thing that I've done is this column over here. So this column is on bedrock, and it's super solid. It's got 7 pieces of rebar up in it, and I got it up all the way in 2 days. The first day was like up halfway, and then I did 2 more batches yesterday, and then it was just like overflowing the form, but there was just enough there to tie off the next layer of remesh when I put that on. And this is basically the most solid structure I've built out of everything, because it's on bedrock and because it's so thick, solid, and it's wrapped in remesh. And then at the very bottom there's a ring, a double wrapped ring of rebar to prevent it from separating, and then all this rebar is just gonna make this column so solid. I might taper it a little bit going up. I don't know if I'll add to the form today, but I'm just really happy with how strong this is. Just the strongest thing basically I've ever built. And the idea is that eventually I'll build that up and it'll arch to over here, those 2 pieces of rebar which are starting there, and then that'll arch over the gate, and that'll probably be also roughly a 32-foot arch, or somewhat similar to the size of this arch. And then today I should be able to get some coverage, maybe even underneath of the arch and on like the back side of those forms. We'll see. Maybe some more over here, but that's the latest. It's Johan. And over there is a Benedict. Oh, my boys. Kids. Hey, don't eat me. Oh, get over there. Don't eat that. No tobacco for goats. No, get over there. Get down there. Can't believe these goats. They think they're lap goats. He just jumps right up on my lap. And then Han over there is trying to eat my clothes. What are you doing now, buddy? Oh, they got sharp little hooves. Crazy kids. Oh, eating my hair too. They eat everything. Ah, Benedict, you crazy cat. Look at the camera. Look at the camera, Benedict. Oh, let's go for the layer. No, got it. Here's Arthur. He's number 4 in the pecking order amongst the 4 roosters. When I put the boys out in the outside pen this morning so I could work without them eating all sorts of stuff, Arthur found his way into the pen. He must have like climbed up and jumped in, and he really likes to hang out with the boys. Super cute. And he's often bossed around by the other roosters. Butterscotch there is number 2 in the pecking order, and Vangari is number 3. Earlier in the season, Butterscotch got into a fight with Dino to try to move up to the lead rooster. I took a video of it, and I tried to share it, but YouTube didn't want any cockfighting videos shared. But Butterscotch was unsuccessful, so he's still number 2 in the pecking order. And it didn't even get too bloody. It was alright. But just chilling down here. Alright, here's the head cock himself. Dino came down to see what everyone's up to. He's got Coco and Speedy following him closely. But most of the girls are hanging out over here. Here's Kendall, Vangari's sister. The 2 survivors from last year. She's such a fierce girl. Born amidst like 8 brothers. And she's the only girl. These boys have good odds. There's 4 boys and I don't even know how many girls, like 20 or something. Wisdom's sitting on eggs. She's been sitting on eggs for about 3 days. Hopefully it turns out well for her. Got a party going on down here. Who wants to party? Party time. How about you, Sammy? Looking out, Vangari. Good looking. Sammy's one of the oldest girls. She's the oldest one who's born here for sure. And she might actually be the oldest girl now. So I've done one of the hardest parts, which is transitioning from that arch to this arch to that arch, and then added 2 pieces of rebar for this final arch, which will go over to there for this side, and then closing off this side here as well. So ready for the next batch of mortar, which will then seal up that form, so later I can do concrete on that probably tomorrow. And then over here I should be able to get the rest of that sidewall up to around the edge of that rebar with just enough room for another piece of rebar. And I got a double coat on the inside and outside of it there, so that's really solidifying that arch. And then I should be able to get that little triangle in between the first arch and then this flying buttress up to that wall. So time for the second batch of mortar of the day. I was able to successfully relocate Wisdom with the eggs that she was sitting on from the normal laying spot down into this coop, and she's been sitting on them. So that was a great success, so that there won't be a disaster like last year where the laying egg girls kept adding new eggs underneath Wisdom, and then she got too many and they get mixed in with the other ones, and then they get confused, and then also it wasn't a good place, and when the one hatched it got all messed up and died. So this should be perfect, and as long as some of those are fertile, there are good chances for success. So it's Thursday morning in the final week of April, the last day of the preseason for season 12 OG Foundation. You can see this little section here. I got mortar on the top and the bottom, and then today I'll be adding concrete into there. And also yesterday I was able to connect the end of, or this corner, and there was a little piece of rebar sticking out there, and so I was able to connect the rebar from that into this structure. So now it's all connected, at least initially, and got the form set up over here and a first coat onto it. So I'll get an extra coat onto this, get this nice and tied into the old structure, and then probably tomorrow I'll be able to move that form into this last main section right there. And I also got a third circle up, and I've got at least one more circle I'm going to put here. I might put a circle in this final section, but I'm not sure. Right here, it's actually going to be the like the wall crenellation. So that'll be the first Merlon, a 4-foot one, and then it's going to have a crenelle right there. I'm not entirely sure about how it transitions, but basically this arch coming from there is going to be the end of the Molly Stark Tower. So in between the Molly Stark Tower and this structure, it's going to be open. And so the open section is going to have the wall, and then the closed wall, the closed tower section will have these windows. So I just don't know exactly where this arch is going to intersect here and how that'll transition. But I'm probably going to figure that out today. And you can see how tall this is going to end up getting, at least as tall as those pieces of rebar. And then the other thing I started yesterday, which was quite an ordeal, is starting to put these stairs into here, because it's now too narrow for the ladder and I need to get up there, and it'll just be nice to have stairs. But it was really difficult to try to set these in. I put them in that way because metal all works with tension, so I wanted the metal up on top versus the other way, having the support on the sides underneath the step. But they're really tall stairs, and right now they're not straight. It was just difficult to try to get the lath bent kind of appropriately in this strange structure, and then sort of using sticks to support it a little bit. So it was kind of falling apart when I was doing it. It was a bit frustrating, but I should be able to get a good bit more coverage on. It's going to actually take several days to get this done, and for them to be actual usable steps, many different rounds of mortar. So today we'll just be anchoring it in more before really putting any weight on it. But once these do get done, it'll be cool to have these steps kind of like in to those, the arches in between, and they'll actually end up being, they'll have a structural element as well, being able to connect those. So that'll all be really good. And then I'm just starting with kind of building the lath up around here as well. And yesterday I pulled this form and was able to mortar over that. I tried to pull that form, but I wasn't able to, and I was damaging the structure. Sometimes it's difficult to pull forms, and that's the time when it's most likely that I damage the work that I do. And so there's a piece of rebar I had to put here, which is on the outside of the form, so I couldn't mortar the whole piece of rebar, because when I finally pull that form, which hopefully I can do today, it's going to move that rebar. So I just got the very corner of it kind of mortared in. So I'll give you some shots at the end of the day, and then that'll be the whole preseason. I think you can kind of get an idea of the shape of how this thing is starting to come together. And yeah, one more day ahead. So there's a very unexpected plot twist on the last day of the preseason. Ended up giving 2 Vermont State Troopers a tour of the castle. It was a great experience with them. So I got this concrete poured up here, 2 batches. So this will offer me a good platform to be able to work on to do the rest of the arches. And then over here I got cement mortar connecting this whole section of these walls, and so now everything is fully connected from over there. Well, I guess there's not cement all the way on that arch to the other side, but this is a great start for the preseason. And now there'll be a video every Friday, and you'll see the construction of the Molly Stark Tower as it grows. The 2 troopers were very pleased with the castle and everything that it represents, so that was a pleasant surprise. That's all for this preseason video. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next Friday. Also, here's the stairs for your final shot with one extra batch. Was able to get most of the side walls in, and once, well, it's actually cured because this is the Friday morning now, but I can start on the actual steps today. Anyways, that's all. Thanks for tuning in.